Hello, my name is David Spicer. I am the instructor for jail standards here at Arkansas Tech University at the Ozark campus. In this block of instruction, we are going to be looking at prisoner transport. There are some assumptions that you have to make when transporting prisoners, and here are some of them. Never make the hazardous assumption of that he's too young to hurt you. It doesn't matter how old the person is, under certain conditions, the prisoner that's being transported, he or she could possibly hurt you. Never assume that age is a factor in if they can hurt you or not. She's too drunk to hurt me. I will be honest with you, some of the worst scuffles I've ever seen or been involved in have been in drunk females. Never think that someone is too drunk to hurt you. It's possible that they can. Never assume, again, that they're too old. Age should never be assumed that somebody would not hurt you because of their age. I have actually seen some officers. I worked with an officer one time who was, I believe, probably one of the oldest officers in the state of Arkansas as a full-time officer, and he was someone who was very stout. I would not have wanted to fight him, and he was an officer. And someone just like him that's a prisoner could be also dangerous. He's in handcuffs. Just because somebody's in handcuffs doesn't mean they're no longer a danger. They can kick with their feet. They could still try to rush you and knock you down. Still may have some use of their hands. Still dangerous. And sometimes they work to get out of those handcuffs. Just because they're in handcuffs doesn't mean they're completely safe. Here are a few FBI statistics on prisoner transports and officer safety. It's quite dated in 2007, but in 2007 the FBI reported 7,347 officers assaulted while handling, transporting, or maintaining custody of prisoners. And 16 law enforcement officers were killed while transporting prisoners. And 14 were killed in single officer situations, and 2 killed when more than one officer was involved. So even when there was more than one officer there, a prisoner killed somebody. So in 1994, 7,456 officers were assaulted while handling, transporting, and maintaining custody of prisoners when attacked. So you can see that about a little over 7,000, almost 7,500 from 94 to 2007 was still about the same. So probably roughly this year alone, 7,500 to 8,000 officers will be assaulted during a prisoner transport. And then in 85 to 94 there were 35 law enforcement officers killed. Transporting an inmate can be very dangerous. There's always a chance for assault, and unfortunately officers have been killed during this time. Always identify your prisoners. Know who they are. Know about them. You should know their name and date of birth, their physical description of what they look like, height, weight, eye color, hair color, physical descriptions that you could give someone if necessary. You should know their addresses, past and present. For example, if you were to be trying to transport an inmate and they escape, where do they currently live that they may be trying to get to, or where they live in the past. Places of employment, past and present. Names and addresses of relatives and associates. And their past arrest and criminal record. It's very important to know their criminal record and past arrest. Have they been arrested before for escapes? Have they been arrested for assaults? Have they been arrested for assault with deadly weapon? Have they had a history of using weapons? Whatever it may be, it's important in knowing what you can about them and transporting them. And you should always have a current photo. That is something that should be obviously done when they're booked in, but it's nice to have that picture if needed. So if you're taking a prisoner as a jailer and you're going to be leaving to take them somewhere, especially from a jail situation, where are you going to transport them to? Court, doctor, emergency room, clinic, funeral, extradition, court-ordered move, all kinds of things, maybe to the Department of Corrections. You need to know where you're going. and be aware of the unique situations of that. You should also know what route you're going to take. Are you going to take the same route back? I would recommend that you not take the same way. I used to be involved in transporting prisoners from Paris courthouse or Paris jail in Paris in Logan County to the courthouse in Boonville, and there was actually two ways you could go, and they were about the same distance. Sometimes I would go one way there and the other way back. Sometimes I always made it different where these inmates would never know which route I was going to take. Again, was the inmate notified of date and time of transport? When I was the jail administrator at Logan County, I found it very important to never let inmates know when they were going to be moved. Jailers were instructed not to talk about the movement of inmates. However, sometimes inmates know about their movements. For example, if they know they have a certain time and date they're supposed to be in court, they know on that day they're going to court, and they can let family know. We would never notify anyone. We never even notified inmates of when they were being transported to the Department of Corrections until we walked into the cell, removed them from the cell. I just think that information could get out to someone who could be set up to ambush the officer if they were desperate enough to use that as an opportunity to escape. Also, how long is it going to take to get there and get back? Someone should always know if you're going somewhere. If you're not there over a certain time, something may be wrong. It's important when you're transporting that your vehicle doesn't break down on you while you're in the middle of a transport, especially if it's a long trip. So make sure the vehicle's maintained. Most departments have fleets that people is taking care of the fleet, but still check this yourself. Make sure that when you before you transport, that all the tires look good, the brakes are working, it's gas, it's plenty fueled up, plenty of oil. Last thing you want to do is be on fumes when you barely start your transport and you need to stop and get gas. Check the interior, check the front and back seat, floorboards and the ceiling. Make sure there's no loose items. Make sure nobody's putting contraband in there somewhere. And that contraband may not be planted there. It might have been left behind from a previous transport that somebody didn't check it well enough. And if there's any trash, whatever the trash may be, it may be something that the inmate may get a hold of to do something with. And then again, is the motor maintained in good operation? You want to just make sure your vehicle's in good condition, that it's going to get you to where you're going. Nothing like being stuck on the side of the interstate halfway between your county and the Department of Corrections somewhere, having to babysit a inmate who knows they're going to prison, and you're broke down and no one there to help you, and don't know how long it's going to be before help gets there. Some additional danger signals in prisoner transport. Does this prisoner or inmate have a history of escape? If they've done it once before, they have the potential of doing it again. Are they a gang member? A lot of our counties here locally may not have that as much of danger, but it's always a possibility. A gang member may be coming through your jurisdiction. If they're a gang member, that is a higher risk of a transport. Do they have a history of assaults? Like I said earlier about knowing about their criminal history. If they have a history of assaults, they just may have a temper. They may not be able to handle certain situations, and their answer to handling that situation is assaulting someone. Are they emotionally or mentally disturbed? These can be very, very dangerous because these will not react in a situation like other people do. What makes them angry may be a simple, hello, how are you doing? So those situations can be an extra danger in transport. Are they a drug trafficker? Drug traffickers are moving from one coast to the next, moving drugs and money. And if it's someone who is involved in drugs and possibly a criminal organization like the cartels, someone may want to get them back out of custody and get them. So this could be an additional danger. Some precautions you should always take in prisoner transports. And failure to take these precautions could result in jeopardizing your own life. You could be hurt or killed. It could permit the inmate to take you hostage for some reason to aid their escape. It could give the inmate a chance to escape itself if you don't take these precautions. And it exposes the general public to danger. And it's bad publicity for you, your agency. If a person, and it may be somebody who was in jail for something simple, but if they escape, the general public's going to see them as armed and dangerous and scared to death. So need to make sure you take care of precautions. Low risk transport. Here's some that are low risk. If the inmate is being released and know it's a fact, if you have an inmate you're transporting somewhere and they know that when they get there they're probably walking right back out the door, there's no reason for them to escape. Why would they assault someone? Not that it's not always possible, but that is a low risk. You should still take all the precautions and continue as you should, but these are lower risk transports. Most medium average risk. Most transports are medium to average risk, but again, all precautions should always be taken when doing a transport. When does it become a high risk transport? The inmate becomes violent during the transport, begins to kick the windows, the doors, things like that, yelling, screaming. Suddenly your transport is a higher risk. The inmate attempts escape, again, trying to kick out the doors or the windows, or I've seen inmates who, I've seen departments who have now added bars to their windows and doors of their vehicles to keep this from happening. But again, if they actually try to attempt escape, that has obviously become a higher risk transport. The inmate becomes sick or has a seizure during the transport. This could be higher risk for several reasons. One, it's a medical emergency, but also that may be a ploy to try to escape. Outsiders attempt to take an inmate from you. That is a very high risk. I recently saw a video where an officer was in pursuit of a motorcycle. The motorcycle crashes. He gets out to arrest the guy. Another vehicle pulls up as he's trying, and this vehicle that pulls up, a brother and a friend of this guy, and they begin assaulting the officer to try to break him, to get the guy loose. Fortunately, some citizens also stopped, and they helped the officer and helped prevent the escape and got everyone under control. Handcuffing procedure. Have the inmate place their hands behind their back. Have the palms facing out. Cuff snug but not too tight. Put a finger width so they're not too tight. And make sure that you always double lock the handcuffs so they don't tighten up behind them, because then they're going to say they're tightening up, and they are, and it will be painful. It could cause problems, so make sure you double lock them where they will not tighten up on them. Check the cuffs periodically during a long transport for tampering and to avoid injury to the inmate. Front handcuffing procedure. This should never be done, but there may be some instance that it has to be. It's not recommended. Use only if the prisoner's medical condition or other unusual circumstance. Secured at waist level, and use a belly chain. They make a belly chain that you could wrap around someone. They could be cuffed to the belly so their movement of their hands up and down is limited. Secure the handcuffs to the prisoner's belt by use of flex cuffs if necessary. Slip handcuff under prisoner's belt with the buckle to the rear. Put the belt buckle to the rear so they cannot undo the belt and get that loose from it then. Always double lock the handcuffs again. Never assume that when you transport, vehicle has been searched prior to your transport. Always search it before you transport and after. Always have the mindset that there's potential danger during any transport. Always be aware that this is that there's danger is right around the corner. The prisoner's attitude can change any minute, and also always place the prisoner in a seatbelt. I will probably attempt to post a video of a situation here in Arkansas where an inmate was not in a seatbelt. At least in the video I didn't see him in a seatbelt. They get out of their handcuffs. Looks like they get a lighter, fixing to start a fire in the back seat. Officer turns on his lights and sirens, trying to hurry to get to wherever he's going with this inmate. Has a wreck, and the inmate's thrown out of the back window. But always place them in a seatbelt. Do not lock the prisoner to an immovable object. Maybe an emergency that you have to move them. So they should never be locked down to something that they cannot be easily removed from. Desperate people will do desperate things in desperate times, so always be aware of that. When you're transporting somebody, do not think that they're just going to willingly go there. Always be of a mindset that they're possible. Anything's possible. What if the prisoner becomes ill, unconscious, or tries to escape? Advise dispatch of your location. Notify them. And also advise of emergency and request assistance. Drive to the nearest hospital or law enforcement facility if needed. If you're not in your local jurisdiction, drive to the local law enforcement agency, have an ambulance meet you there, things like that. Be thinking about these in advance, and never enter the back seat or prisoner area during that time. The event may be a ploy to attempt to escape or assault you, so always be aware of that. And guard your weapon and proceed with extreme caution when dealing with this situation. Again, escapes, there's the public perception that we have to be aware of that's going to be caused by the escape. There could also be damage to police or property, chance of injury to you or someone else, the cost of the agency, the payment to other agency for the manhunt or public injury lawsuits, things that can come. Main cost is going to be just the man hours and resources used to try to attempt to locate this person and get them back into custody. Think of someone being paid $15 an hour and they spend 10 hours out searching for that person. That's $150, and let's say there's 20 people out there. That mounts up to a lot of taxpayers' money really quick. Alrighty, I'm going to add this with some videos to your class, and there will be a short quiz to follow.